Gotta straighten it up. Gotta straighten it up. By the end of the night, we had a new Doom guide and a plan that involved 100 goats. Straighten it up. Straighten it up. Hey everybody, this is DM Mike, and yes, we played just recently Hoard of the Dragon Queen Chapter 6 this past Friday, and it actually was a fairly good session. We had a good time. We started off, let's just get into it, right? Let's just not waste any time. We started off with the cutscene here, the radio drama called Blades of the Brotherhood, and that kind of set us off. And in the timeline, this happens, I'll probably explain this too when I put out the radio drama video for it, but this happens right after their attack on the old tower, and Jevin is ended up in a scrap with the Thieves Guild, and that's all I'll say about that. It was an action-packed radio drama. It was fun to do, it was hard to do, but it was successful, and it was shorter. It was only like 4 minutes, 20 seconds, something like that, when most of my radio dramas now are hitting 5 to 8 minutes. So I practiced a little bit of restraint, I have to say. But anyway, we had a good time. We opened with immediately on focusing on a particular character. And that character is Pax. She is our grave cleric. And to make a long story short, we kind of stumbled upon some lore called Doomguides, which are these kind of traveling clerics that follow Kelemvor. And there's not a lot of them, at least in my makeup, my world. But we had kind of stumbled upon this. Back in session 1, I actually used a Nordic term, going to say it wrong, Laflietta or something like that. And it meant wanderer. So she was a wandering cleric. And it's something I kind of toyed with. I liked the idea. And this is like back in June when we started. And that kind of stuck with us, right? She was the wandering cleric. That's what she was known for. Well, come to find out, after some lore study for her and myself, we found out there is such a thing. And it's called the Doomguides. And boy, did that just spark a whole different setup in the campaign. And I think this is wise for any DM, but I think, every once in a while you want to, what they call the spotlight, right? Put the spotlight on a particular character. And after 12 sessions and June, July, August, September, October, a little bit of November, 6 months, half a year later, it was time for her to take the next step. So, we opened that night with the Trial of Kelemvor, which is a tabletop simulator map that I created. And I have a whole video that's already up there, so you can go look at that. But we started with this, and I had her that evening. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. It was really early in the morning. 6 priests came into her room and told her that Kelemvor has called her. And she must go through the trials of the undead. So the catch was, they put oil on her, but they took all of her weapons and armor, and she was allowed to choose only one weapon to take in with her. And it was important which one you took, because that would be enchanted, that would be blessed by Kelemvor if you pass the test. So she was given a robe of Kelemvor and escorted down below the temple of Kelemvor into a kind of an old crypt. And inside the crypt is where they would challenge the ones who were chosen, challenge them against the undead to see if they were worthy. And let me tell you something. I scared myself with this challenge. Sometimes on paper, things look great. And luckily, I did make some adjustments. But there were a couple times in that challenge where I thought, okay, she's dead. I mean, I wasn't going to kill her. I don't think that's the purpose. They don't go around killing their Doomguides. I had a plan for that. But it turned out to be a pretty difficult challenge, and by the skin of her teeth did she get through it. And basically the setup was her in the center of the arena. Maybe I'll also put your pictures up of this map. She was placed in the center. She had no armor whatsoever. She's down to her base armor class. And then I had 2 rounds of skeletons, 4 each, come into the arena. They spawn into the arena. They're summoned by the priests who are watching the event. And I didn't take part in this. I actually had my other players play the role of the skeletons and come after her. So she had to fight all of them off. Now, what I did to help her along the way was each round, every single skeleton had something on him. For instance, skeleton number 1 had a health potion that she could get. Skeleton number 2 had a little bit of her armor, like maybe like a shoulder pauldron and a gauntlet. So she could actually strategically go through and maybe fight the one she needed. Like if she needed health, okay, you go after skeleton number 1 because that's where the health potion is, right? So I tried to allow for a little bit of a safety net in some ways, because I didn't know what it was going to be like to have 4 skeletons attacking one person. If they all hit at the same time, they all make a hit in a single round. That's like, it depends on what the weapon they're using, right? But that's like somewhere between 20 and 30 hit points immediately if every single one hits. And so there was a moment there at the very beginning of this trial where like two out of the 4 hit, and she was already going down. And another thing is she was not allowed to use her spells. So she didn't have her healing spell. She had to go in this pretty raw, in a cloak, and only her warhammer, her mace. That was it. And it was rough. But you know what? She did. She faced the first challenge. She got through it. That's the one, the very first round. I thought she was dead. I just thought, okay, that's okay. If you fail the test, it's not because you weren't chosen. It just means you're not ready, basically, is how I saw that. But she got through it. And I tell you, there were so many times she's down to like the last 2 or 3 hit points, and she hits the last skeleton who has the health potion. She grabs it and drinks it. She brings herself back up again, and then round 2 starts, and then here come the 4 more skeletons, and each one has something unique. Again, I think the last 4 had a shield and the rest of her armor, so she could totally kind of put it back on and be prepared for the last round, which is round 3, which takes place outside the arena. But every time she put a piece on, I just give her a +1 to her AC, +1, +1, +1. She's putting it on. But the second round was close again. It was getting, I was kind of in panic mode because I'm not controlling the monsters. The other players were. I had one in particular, Althea, who plays our druid in the campaign. Her skeletons were hitting hard. They hit almost every single time. And there were a couple times, I think 2 times in there, she rolled natural 20s. And I thought, wow, okay, well, at least you got to the second round. But nope. After this bombardment of being hit, suddenly everybody was just rolling really, really low. So she went through methodically and nailed each one of them and destroyed them. And the final combat was against a fellow Doomguide. So they were transported me. I'll put a picture up. They're transported to a different arena, and there she just goes toe to toe with another Doomguide. And there was a little bit of back and forth there where nobody was hitting anybody. They were just kind of really crossing swords, and shield bashing and protecting themselves. But at the very end, she does finally destroy the Doomguide. So she passed the test, and I didn't think she would. And that's not to be cynical. I just thought, okay, maybe when you're level 6 or 7, this will work. This will be a little bit easier for you because it's going to be the same skeletons and whatnot. So she just barely got through this. So when it was all done, she got to choose one weapon, and that weapon would be enchanted with the blood of Kelemvor, be placed on the altar, and basically, if you look at the Dungeon Master Guide, it becomes a +1 weapon, and it has a little more benefits when you go against the undead. But basically, that's what happened. And there are other blessings to come, but I think that's got to be for later time. So it was intense. It was fun. I could feel her panicky a little bit, like in a good way, like, oh my gosh, almost dying, running around this arena. And it's not me killing her. It's, the other players. And I didn't want to, and here's the thing, I didn't want to run the skeletons by myself. I just felt like it'd be boring. The other players just watching this. So I really want to make sure they were participating. So if you find yourself in this situation, maybe you're running arena and you've got a spotlight on somebody, have your players run the other monsters. That keeps them involved in what's going on. Because when you do put the spotlight on a particular character, that means everything else kind of becomes quiet, becomes neutral. And you don't want to obviously bore your audience. So that worked out really well. I made one little mistake in the arrangement of things, but it worked out really well. So we got a Doomguide. They come into Elturel. They're actually already in the city of Elturel. They've made their decision to travel by land to the Mere of Dead Men. And somewhere along the way, this is all tables eventually descend into this, or descend into chaos. Our ranger Mortimer had an idea of. He asked me, "Are there any goats in Elturel?" I was like, well, yeah, there's probably lots of goats in Elturel. It's a trading area, sure. And he wanted to buy 100 goats, put daggers on their heads, and just have them run in front. Whenever they encountered something, they just heard all these goats. And it's all contextual, right? Like, you have to be there, you have to be in the moment. It had some people at the table really cracking up pretty hard. I mean, he obviously was much funnier and better said than what I'm relaying to you. But yeah, there were some wacky plans kind of put in place. But yeah, they got their stuff together. They ended up buying a wagon, and they took that. They actually paid for the services of a driver to actually drive them all the way out to Waterdeep, while they just kind of chilled, did whatever they needed to do for the journey. And there they dropped everything off, left their stuff, and walked by foot to the Mere of Dead Men. Now, this is when I actually did another one of these, the Choose Your Own Adventure. This one actually, I think, worked really well. Unfortunately, the first slide screwed up. And that's like the first one I tested. I have no clue what happened with that one. But I think it actually created a little more tension, which is what I needed. There were, I think, 2 out of the 3 was pretty divisive of what people wanted to do. Some of the scenarios I gave them. The first scenario was just them coming across another caravan that just needed help. They were afraid other caravans had been attacked, so they didn't want to go to the next destination by themselves. So they had a choice to go with them, or maybe just show them the way, or ignore it altogether, right? And I think the next one was a band of gnolls attacking some peasants, or a group of peasants or whatnot. And they had, opportunities to engage, and there were certain ways they could engage. And then the last one was something to do with, as they got closer to the swamp, there was an old temple that had sunken in, and they had an opportunity to go put it on their map and ignore it, go investigate it. They could choose at the table who they wanted to go investigate and then report back to them, or they all go and investigate and find out what's going on. Well, that one turned out to be pretty brutal. Here's the thing with these things. You're not doing real-time combat. You just choose something, and there is, either a good thing that happens or a bad thing. And leading up to this, there were a couple good things that happened. They were fine. But this one hit pretty hard. They went to the temple. There was a lich there. The lich cursed them. They each had a bout of madness, and I had to go through the Dungeon Master's guide and tell them what happened. And they were reduced to half hit points. And it was a very kind of concentrated magical attack where for 2 days, it'd take them an entire 2 days of rest to come back up to full hit points because of just the curse that was put on them. So now that would have happened to only one of them, but they all went as a group. And so it happened to everybody. I didn't think they would choose that one, honestly. But it created tension because Althea is trying to get to Cricket, who is, in the castle somewhere in the swamp. So it did create some tension of like, hey, we can't help everybody on the road. Let's go. I need to get to the castle. We need to free Cricket. Remember her? So it did its job, I think. And it was still pretty entertaining and fun to do. And I'm by no means a master of writing those things, but I felt like the choices were good. So anyway, they come to the swamp of, the Mere of Dead Men. And I have about 4 or 5 maps actually for Tabletop Simulator. And I'm going to put videos out on that. Maybe if I can figure this out, upload them to the Tabletop Simulator community so that people could use them if they want to. But we didn't get very far at this point. They got to the swamp. Some of them got caught in quicksand, minor slowdown for them, inconvenience. And at one point, they came across a bunch of bullywugs. They couldn't understand their language, of course. They could hear noises, so they sent the thief out. I'll put some pictures up of the map. They sent the thief out to investigate, and he took Clover, the pixie, fairy, sprite, whatever you want to call her, with her to investigate, and they could see them. They were trying to figure out what was going on. And that was fine, right? That was fine. He was just scouting. Well, the thief decided to use thaumaturgy towards a bush to his right, and kind of he wanted to see how they would react. So he made like an alligator sound, like a giant alligator, which is they are in the swamp, by the way. That's not unreasonable. But he made an alligator sound, and of course, all the bullywugs immediately reacted to this. They know about crocodiles. They know how to work the swamp. So they immediately surrounded the bush, started throwing spears in, and they started investigating the other bushes. And of course, in doing so, that initiated combat immediately. At least for now, because that's where we ended. We ended the night a little bit early, though we kind of started a little bit earlier. So we got about 2.5, 3 hours in. But that's where we ended, guys. That's where we're at. It's a pretty short campaign diary. They're just now getting into the mirror, and there's a lot of things to come. A lot of ideas, I think, that I've gotten recently from movies that I think will work really, really well. But overall, it was a good night. The cutscene worked. The Choose Your Own Adventure worked. The Trials of Kellamvor actually worked. And if you're running this, and maybe you're trying to keep up and like, okay, what happens in Chapter 6? Don't worry, the Trials of Kellamvor and those things don't happen in the book. This is just something I had to do. It's obviously important that a DM, I think, responds to his players, very certain things that are happening. And I think in the course of this, many people will have the spotlight put on them. Many people will. It's the culmination of their stories over a long period of time. Things they're doing, NPCs, how they're reacting, all those kinds of things. So it was fun to have this crescendo of our druid, of our cleric, who has now become this Doom Guide. And it's exciting. I think it's like it was her character is one of her goals in life, and now here it is. And so what do you do with it? How do we live as a Doom Guide now? So it was a fun night. It was an interesting night. We had a lot of laughter, which is great. I actually remembered to record it, so I actually have it on podcast. I think I've missed like 3 or 4 of these things because I'm doing these videos, and then I'm doing tabletop simulator videos, and then I'm doing radio dramas videos, and then I'm doing podcasts. Some things just get lost in the ether, right? It's just inevitable. But guys, I think that's it. I think that's where we're at. And I think the next few campaign diaries are really going to be about the swamp. So if you're running this and you're in Chapter 6 and you want to know, okay, what's going to happen in the swamp? Well, this will be your bread and butter. I think the next 3, maybe 4 campaign diaries, maybe 2 or 3. 4 is that's a lot. 2 or 3. I don't know how long Chapter 6 really is going to be for us. It's already been 3 sessions. We're going into the 4th. Extended organically by my players, but I don't know how long this is going to be. So currently we're in the swamp. I'm going to be building out Castle Natier or Nitar or whatever the heck it is through Tabletop Simulator. We'll get to that in the future. They still have to rescue Cricket. They still got to figure out where Resimir is. They still got to figure out where all this stuff is going. There's a lot to do in the swamp coming up. So guys, it probably sounds uneventful, but man, a lot of stuff happened. It was a lot of fun. So that's it, guys. I'm going to sign off. It's a kind of a quick campaign diary. A lot more videos to come, especially the next radio drama, Blades of the Brotherhood, will be up probably by the end of the week or very, very soon. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you in the next video. Straighten it up. Straighten it up.